So now we're going to look at the diversification in the Nigerian economy and growth opportunities. We're going to look at different sectors of the economy. So first of all, I'd like to I have a color schema here where I colored the sectors that are really dynamic and doing well are colored in green, and that are kind of at the forefront of driving the Nigerian economy and where a lot of the middle class are going to start earning their bread and butter is painted green. The sectors that are stagnating, not really moving, have a lot of potential but not really moving due to structural deficiencies in the Nigerian economy or deficiency in policy are colored red. That's finance and manufacturing. And then the sectors that are colored green, agriculture and crude and petroleum, account for 50% of Nigeria's GDP. So they bring in, probably hire the more people, bring in more revenue, and that's why I colored them in regal color, purple, to kind of bring out that point. We can see, from this data, we see that, telecoms, hospitality. I mean, first of all, let me backtrack. Why do we have to look at growth rate and contribution? If the sector is usually, and this is just human behavior, that is how it is, worldwide. If a sector contribution to the economy is large, like we have agriculture, 35%, most likely the growth rate will be slower because it's probably approaching maturity. Now, it's important to bear in mind that Nigeria is a developing country and every sector has opportunity to grow. But if a sector contribution is large, growth rate usually will be slower. And then if the sector contribution is small or underweight, like we see telecoms or construction, you're going to see that the growth rate will be larger. And so as a businessman, you have to begin to think, okay, this is what the data is telling me. What does it mean in terms of strategy? Does it mean that more people need phones in Nigeria? Telecom and post is just 5%. What are the opportunities that lie in that sector? Or you look at building and construction. How many people who own homes in Nigeria? How many people still want to own homes? Is that why the growth rate is in double digits? And so, that you can see that telecoms, hospitality, solid minerals, construction are underweight in their contribution to the Nigerian economy, but growing significantly. We can see that banking and finance are stagnating at 5%. And again, that still, goes to the potential in the Nigerian economy. Nigerian economy could easily grow in double digits because for the banking sector, they really have to lend to the real sector for the economy to really begin to grow. But that will change going forward from next year because there are reforms on the ground to bring in foreign banks, open up the sector to foreign competition because only 10% of the banking sector is open to foreign participation right now. So from next year, it is expected that this sector will grow. And for the manufacturing sector, which is just 3%, there are plans on the ground right now to to liberalize the power sector because that is the reason why manufacturing has stagnated at 3%. So this is going to increase, activity in the manufacturing sector and increase economic growth. And what it's going to do is bring in more people into the middle class. So I think this is the way to look at this data. It's just in terms of who owns what. If a sector is underweight, like construction, which is booming today in Nigeria, home ownership, for example, is very low in Nigeria, and a lot of people want to own homes. So you have all this construction companies, investors coming in, building homes and selling them, in Nigeria, and that is why the sector is booming. So as an investor, this is the way to look at this this data and interpret it. And you also have, and one also has to begin to think about the consumer. What is the potential if the agriculture sector, which is large but not growing as much, what are the potentials there for consumers, or versus the other sectors that are underweight. This is oil and non-oil sector growth rates. Still continuation from what I was talking about in the previous slide. I think the main thing here, key takeaway point here, is that the fact that from the first quarter of 2008 till date, the non-oil sector of Nigeria in the Nigerian economy is doing very well. It's growing more than the oil sector, way more than the oil sector. And this is testament to the fact that Nigerian economy, which was once a mono economy, used to be heavily dependent on oil, is now diversifying. So you, as a business person, strategies, you now begin to think, if, the oil sector is no longer the sole revenue provider or sole employer of labor, because previously in Nigeria it used to be the oil sector and then the government. It means there are more sectors that are doing well and hiring people. What does that mean for me as a business person? Does that mean that the consumer class has grown, that the middle class has grown? Also from a policy perspective, because there are different ways of looking at this data. Does that mean that the business environment is stable now to allow for diversification, multiple sectors doing well, having investments, as opposed to the past when it was the same sector? What does it mean for foreign investment, signing contracts, hiring people? Does it mean that the labor laws, the environmental laws are better? So these are different ways of looking at this data and also thinking about strategy. And I think that I would have to say here that McKinsey in 2008 stated that only one-third of the economic growth in Africa in the last decade has been due to commodities. That's things like oil and metal or even agriculture, and that majority of the growth has been due to growth in the ICT sector, in telecoms, in construction. So there are new, and I think this is what is mirrored in the Nigerian economy. So there are new sectors with new growth opportunities in Africa today that the businessman can exploit, can take advantage of. And another thing, I think, another important thing is in terms of strategies, I think is positioning, because this also means, yes, Nigeria is growing, but it's also going to reach a point that it matures, but it's still in the phase that it's still growing. And you have to think of, is this the point where I position myself? Because after a while, returns are not going to be what they are at this stage of the growth phase. Still on the Nigerian consumer profile, we're going to look at the university student. So universities are located in every state of the federation. Usually you have a state university, a federal government-owned university, a college of technology, a college of education. So you could have at least 3 in every state of the federation. The exceptions might be the newly created states, but at least those would have at least a federal or a state university. There are also specialized universities like technology university and agricultural universities. So for this segment, I think their main source of income are their parents, and they also work on vacation. But the products that are in high demand for this class is, this consumer class is cell phone, computer and internet, room and board, fashion, books. And these are not luxuries. These are necessities. They're increasingly becoming necessities, just like all the products I listed for the couple on the previous page. So this is when I say necessity, it means that this is something that the Nigerian student will want to have, irrespective of what their income is. So I think in terms of strategy for the small business person, you have to think about a way to make computers customized for this market. I think 2 months ago, I saw a kind of computer that was launched in India. It was launched for high schools in India. So I think it's a $200 laptop, I think, because they made it to reach schools and areas that didn't have computer access. So I think that's is very applicable for the Nigerian market. So in terms of strategy, that's one way that the small business person could look at it. In the area of room and board, as we know, generally accommodation is a big problem in Nigeria. I mean, people that have jobs, home ownership is still very low among the Nigerian general population. But the student class have their own needs for accommodation, and their own kind of accommodation is different, right? It's customized. It's like you have a house, and then you have a mini house for the student class. So, but the key thing is that students have the money. They have to have a place to stay, and so there is a market for this. And when I was in Nigeria, in some cities like in the southeast of the country, like Enugu State, Nigeria, private investors, local investors are pulling resources together and building customized buildings for students. And believe you me, the students are snapping them up very fast. So it's a very lucrative.
If you need additional help or assistance, you can contact us in the U.S. or in South Africa, and the information is there. But you can always, again, go to our website at www